Well, hello again. Seem to have plenty of notes this week, so this might be another reasonably long one. I won't bother setting the timer because if it goes over half an hour, so be it. It's 20 minutes to 10 in the morning here in Western Australia, and it's the 20th of July 2025, equivalent of the 20th of December in the UK. I think the low was 6 degrees, the high is going to be 17 or 18. I'm inside again because, as you may be able to see behind me, it's a bit overcast, and the weather forecast for today is significant rain, about 30 millimetres of rain they reckon. So looking out of the windows, I do live up in the clouds, I can see the rain is approaching, and it will probably get here before I finish the video. So I'm inside again today. Right, what do we have? We have more steam from the pile. I wonder if all this sort of bullshit used to go on, you know, years and years and years ago in the Roman Empire, you know, where you'd have someone called Steaminus Pilus being interviewed by somebody and saying his chariot had been, you know, someone had hovered over their chariot. So, something had hovered over their chariot, you know, and floated them into an alien spacecraft. Yes, well, thank you, Steaminus. A very entertaining yarn. Okay. Coulthart says the Tic Tac was piloted by Lockheed Martin staff psionically. I think he's backpedaling on his original, you know, it's not ET tech, you know, it's made by Lockheed Martin. As I've said previously, I think he just likes saying Lockheed Martin. He's got no idea who made this thing. He won't name his sources because we would all fall about laughing. They'd be names we would all know. Professional piffle peddlers are always in the background of this sort of stuff. Anyway, no such thing as psionics, telekinesis. I mean, you could ask for a demonstration, couldn't you? I mean, these Jake Barber guys, I've probably said this before, you know, their psionic summoning of alien spacecraft. They could try with something a bit less ambitious. They could try, just take them to a local airport and say, look, summon that little Cessna 152 there to fly figure eights directly above us, you know. Something a bit less ambitious. Of course, nobody is psionically summoning aliens. They're not doing it with CE5. And they're not doing it with remote viewing. It's all drivel. Okay. Getting a bit repetitive, maybe. But so are they, of course. And could it be that someone's having a laugh with Coulthart? You know, they're just feeding him all this science fiction bullshit just to see how much of it he will swallow and repeat on mainstream media, because it helps their cause, you know, their talking fees, their TV appearances, their book and DVD sales, that sort of stuff, you know. Their, what do they call them? Keynote speaker fees. Could someone just be feeding Coulthart all this because they think he's a useful idiot? Who knows? Well, who knows how useful he is anyway. So they probably feed him all this bullshit and then fall about laughing when they see him on News Nation repeating it all as truth. I know, you know, I know they're doing this, you know. He knows because he's been told. He knows he's been told. He doesn't know any of this is going on. So I suspect that's what they do. They just feed him a lot of bullshit and then sit around with a few beers and fall about laughing watching him on the TV on News Nation, or on YouTube on News Nation. Is News Nation on TV, mainstream TV, or is it just YouTube channel? Anyway, yeah, maybe they do just think he's a useful idiot. He swallows it all. Well, look at this guy, you know, he's involved with mainstream media and he swallows all this drivel, hook, line and sinker. Let's feed him some more. Is that Coulthart? What Coulthart is being used for? Paulina Luna has said the UAP hearings that were going to be held in July. Sorry about me disappearing into silhouette every now and then. It's the light levels going up and down and the camera's sort of adjusting for it. I tried to do what I can with the lamp here, but it will be nice if you listen to what I'm saying. You don't really need to see me as such. I could just put up the Steve Mumbling logo, really. Days like this, that might be a better idea. Or get a bigger light bulb, maybe. That's only a 40 watt. Being a bit careful with money. I was going to put a diode in series with it, you know, to reduce the power consumption a little bit more, so it would only conduct on positive half cycles. You know. You might see a flicker if I do that. Because it's it's an old style lamp, you know, with an element in it. Okay, right, back to the relevant stuff. So Paulina Luna says they were going to have some UAP hearings in July, but now they've been bumped to September. Burlison says they only want to present people with personal first-hand experience with ET technology. Good for you, Mr. Burlison. Let's hope you stick to that. ET technology and bodies, not just people who have been told stories by others. Isn't that what Luna said last time? You know, she said she wanted to see evidence, she wanted to only hear from people with first-hand experience, and we saw her sitting down next to Eric Davis, lapping up all his science fiction rubbish about visiting ET species. So if you watch this, Senator Luna or Senator Burlison or both, please do not do that again. You know, if they start feeding you all this science fiction rubbish, ask them to prove it. Ask them to tell their stories to Arrow for verification. Ask them if they've got any tangible evidence. If you're going to say that, you only want to see people that have actually had hands-on experience with ET materials. Stick to that. You know, don't sit there and swallow a lot of crap from these science fiction piffle peddlers. You know, put a line through Eric Davis and put off and all the usual suspects. It's just rubbish, you know. Senators or representatives, I still don't know the difference, Burlison and Luna, should demand that anyone claiming first-hand personal experience with ET materials, technological or biological, should have their testimony investigated and verified by Arrow before they're presented as witnesses at any hearing. That's what they should do, because otherwise they're just going to be recording a lot of crap like they did with Grusch and these other people. You know, they're going to stand there and say, well, I swear under oath, you know. But I mean, if they're repeating what they've been told and they say they believe that, they can't be done for perjury. So people say, oh well, they go and tell these stories under oath. They get done for perjury if it wasn't true. Not true. If they believe it, if they believe it's true and they repeat it under oath, they cannot be done for perjury. They can only be done for perjury if they know it's rubbish. They should be done for perjury because all of them do know it's rubbish. Difficult to prove that though, isn't it? I suppose the fact that they can't produce any tangible evidence is proof enough, really, isn't it? So before any more time and money is wasted on another hearing, anyone saying they've got first-hand experience with extraterrestrial, technological or biological materials should have their stories verified by Arrow. Have Arrow look into it, investigate it, and if there's anything to it, present it. If, as I strongly suspect, it's all science fiction rubbish, it's not worth wasting anybody's time and money, is it? I mean, Grusch put forward a guy recently, didn't he, to Burlison that claimed he could talk to angels and aliens. This is the best Grusch can do. We used to have a saying in the UK, you know, daft as a brush. But I reckon in this particular case, it should be daft as a Grusch. if he believes that. Daft as a Grusch. Okay, so yeah, so Grusch, all these guys are a waste of time. You know, Burlison is wasting his money on Grusch. I know he's got to start somewhere, but you know, the others are just the same, aren't they? You know, the people that are involved with Allsap and the Skinwalker Ranch, it's all complete and utter rubbish. You can't take any of them seriously. As I said before, Stratton claims he was followed home by a Wolverine werewolf from Skinwalker Ranch. Wolverine werewolf is a fictitious character from a science fiction book. Or science fantasy book maybe. So anyway, I'm fully expecting any hearing held in September or any other time, to be perfectly honest, to be a complete and utter debacle, just like the ones we've had already. Completely pointless, absolute waste of time. People are losing interest in this by the hour. They need to do a lot better than that. Tangible evidence is required. You know, if people are saying they've worked on ET technology, have their claims investigated by Arrow, and you know, if they're found to be valid, then present the witnesses. If they're not, don't waste people's time and money. Now, Burlison also tells us he wants to get a UFO UAP Disclosure Act written into the next NDAA. So that's the National Defence Authorization Act. Get a UAP Disclosure Act written into the next NDAA. Now this is completely pointless, of course, because we're interested in ETs, not UFOs or UAPs. UFOs, UAPs do not equal alien spacecraft. You know, there's so many balloons and fakes and people flying drones around with balloons hanging under them and, you know, all this stuff. Unless there is tangible evidence that a UAP is of extraterrestrial origin, we're not interested in it. You know, we want to know, are extraterrestrials visiting this planet? Are they coming here? Are they crashing here? That's what we want to know. We've got no interest in UAPs or UFOs. The reason that all the piffle peddlers are stringing it along is because people see UFOs and UAPs. Of course, they're not alien spacecraft, you know. But whilst they can use that, they can use that to keep the subject afloat. People will say, "Oh, I saw this bright light in the sky," you know. "I saw these alien spacecraft going from the cloud base down to the ground." You know, they weren't flares dropped out of a Cessna. They were alien spacecraft, you know. And as long as this sort of stuff goes on, it will sort of keep ticking over. But there's no proven, tangible connection between UAPs, UFOs, and ETs. They should concentrate on extraterrestrials, extraterrestrial technology, extraterrestrial biology. Get UAPs and UFOs right out of the picture. They cloud the issue. So you might want to consider that, Senators or Representatives Luna and Burlison, if you get to see this video. Now, Luna tells us she has one first-hand witness ready to testify. She just needs to get another two, so they want 3 witnesses as a minimum to set a hearing up. You know, like Grusch, Mellon and Elizondo, they were going to be the 3 witnesses in the skiff Luna organised, along with Arrow. You know, so Arrow could hear what they had to say and check it out. And of course, they all called in sick. They couldn't possibly go along to that because they know Arrow would check it out and find it was all bullshit. All 3 of them called in sick and did not attend Luna's skiff, because Arrow was going to be there. And now these whistleblowers are telling Luna they want to cut Arrow out of the picture. And Luna is repeating that. She's saying, oh, we'd like to cut Arrow out, but we can't. That's the last thing you want to do. Ms. Luna, do not cut Arrow out. As soon as you cut Arrow out of the picture, every bullshitter under the sun is going to come forward and claim their first-hand witnesses because they know their stories aren't going to be checked out. They can put their hand up and say, I swear, and all this sort of stuff, and tell you any old bullshit. Do not cut Arrow out of the picture. It's essential that Arrow looks at any testimony given. I don't know, I think Burlison wants Arrow involved. I certainly hope so. I'm hoping that's why she can't cut Arrow out of the picture. Absolutely essential that Arrow is involved in this. That Arrow vets the witness testimony. So I think as soon as these other witnesses, and even the one that Luna is saying is going to come forward, will run away and hide under the table when they find out that Arrow is not going to be cut out of the picture. Arrow is going to be there. Arrow is going to be analysing what they're saying. As soon as they find that out, they'll all run away and hide under the table. You know, they'll all call in sick. They'll all have urgent appointments with their proctologists. You know, they're not going to be able to make it. You know, their pet parrot's got a sore beak. You know. The tortoise, their pet tortoise, is looking a bit seedy. They need to nurse it. You know, all this. There'll be every single excuse under the sun. They'll hear everything from these witnesses, other than I'll come along, give my testimony, and I'm more than happy for Arrow to look into what I'm saying and verify it. That's what would happen if this was true, if there was anything to this. These fake whistleblowers will be queuing up at Arrow's door to get their stories verified. As soon as they're verified and Arrow says there's something to what they're saying, they're going to be instantly famous. They make a lot of money out of it. They don't do that. They run away, just like Bob Lazar, you know. They just run away. They don't want to know anything about Arrow because they know Arrow has the authority to hear any testimony. No skiff is required to talk to Arrow. They can go and talk to them at any time. They don't, because they know what they're saying is bullshit. As soon as they find out Arrow's involved, they will not attend a hearing. Guarantee it. So both Burlison and Luna say again they're only interested in first-hand witness testimony and evidence. They're not interested in hearing people repeating stories they've been told. Let's hope they stick to that this time, because I'm sure at least Luna said that last time, and that's not what happened. I couldn't believe it when I saw her sitting next to Eric Davis going, oh really, 4 species? Don't be, you know, Ms. Luna and Mr. Burlison, please do not be sucked in by this science fiction rubbish. Demand tangible evidence. Okay. Yeah, what fake whistleblowers? Yes. Oh, okay. So I actually jumped onto the next page, went through the next page without actually flicking the page over. Maybe I'm not senile as I thought. Maybe I'm not. I'm not heading for the fluffy carpet slippers just yet. And the silk paisley crimson smoking jacket with the yellow cravat and the Sherlock Holmes pipe. I think that's a year or two away yet, hopefully. So, have I done 2 pages? Good heavens. Yeah, I have. It's just regarding Burlison and Luna. Wanting real witnesses and tangible evidence. Now Burlison is also trying to organise an inspection of Area 51, and other sites where it's claimed ET materials are being stored and worked on. Well, good for him. Good for you, Mr. Burlison. This is the sort of thing. Action, you know. If someone says, I know this is being done at this location, go to that location and see if what they're claiming is actually being done. Good on you for that, Mr. Burlison. And I really hope that Burlison and Luna push for this, and they go to Area 51, and they go to these other sites that are not mentioned, but they're, you know, people like Garry Nolan say, oh, I know the address where this stuff is, you know. So why not subpoena Nolan and ask him where it is? Maybe someone's asked him what it is behind the scenes, and this is one of the locations they're going to be visiting. I certainly hope so. Coulthart should be subpoenaed and demanded that he tells them where this ET craft is with the building over it outside the US, so they can go and have a look. You know, of course, we know he's not telling anybody because the people that told him about it are the usual suspects. If they were named, we'd fall about laughing. If we went there, there's not going to be an alien spacecraft. Coulthart knows that. You know. Okay. Yep. Okay, so the witnesses are going to be calling in sick. I've just said basically what I've written down, but I've said it in a slightly different order. I should actually stick to what I've written down. It sort of it may have a better flow to it, as I've said before. You know, I'll see something and I'll make a note. I go to work, you know, it might be a couple of days and I'll see something else and I'll write a note, you know, and I stack the notes up and I don't. I don't sort them all out before I read them. I take my hat off to people that spend 2 or 3 hours, you know, doing videos on this complete and utter drivel. I just don't know how they do that. I could not do that. This is about the best I can do, really. You know, half an hour to an hour is it for me. So, yeah, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion that Luna's first-hand witnesses will evaporate as soon as they know that she can't cut Arrow out of the picture. They'll say things like they fear for their safety, their lives are being threatened, all the usual bullshit. None of it is true, of course. Arrow have actually publicly put a statement out saying, "Come and tell us your stories." You know, we can. they're without fear or favour. You know, they've got nothing whatsoever to worry about. And of course, once their story's out there, they're perfectly safe, aren't they? If you watch these science fiction films or these films where someone knows this dreadful secret, you know, once they get that secret on the internet or they get it put out there, their life is not at risk anymore, is it? I know they're not documentaries, but you know what? You can see the point, can't you? So they'll claim everything and anything under the sun. The only thing you won't hear from these first-hand witnesses is, sure, I'm happy to have my testimony verified, investigated by Arrow. That's the only thing you won't hear from them. Now, I do have just a quick thing before we get on to a more interesting thing from Avi Loeb. Now, I didn't know Lynn Buchanan was still alive. You know, the Stargate project back in the 70s where the CIA set up the psychic spy. You know, it was all nonsense, of course. But Lynn Buchanan, I saw being interviewed. Now, he did look old. Now, I don't know whether this was recently, whether he's still alive, or whether this was an old interview. But Lynn Buchanan was a member of the CIA Stargate program, along with Hal Puthoff. There's another guy called Ed Dames, Major Ed Dames, and Ingo Swann, you know. And Lynn Buchanan was telling us that you know, he remote viewed alien civilizations and alien planets and all this sort of stuff, but so did Ed Dames, said the same thing. Ingo Swann, of course, claimed he remote viewed the moon. Obvious bullshit, because he said, you know, the ETs were coming here for water for their lunar bases, and this was before NASA or whoever it was found water ice on the moon, you know, more than enough water on the moon for their bases. So it's all bullshit. All of it is drivel. And I think that movie, Men Who Stare at Goats, was based on this wacky Stargate program. Of course, Lynn Buchanan does not describe the alien civilizations. You know, how do they live? Do they have hot and cold water taps in their kitchens and bathrooms? You know, what do they eat? You know, what sort of transport do they use to get around their planet? None of this is described. Where the planets are, not described. Because it's all in here. It's not the mind going out there, it's all in the mind. It's imagination. You know, it's just complete and utter bullshit. It's just not worth consideration. Which is probably why it only gets one page. No such thing as remote viewing. There's no such thing as psionics. No such thing as CE5, summoning aliens. It's all complete and utter drivel. Okay, so Avi Loeb has something called the Galileo project. They've got a couple of these sensor sites set up. He freely admits it's low-hanging fruit type stuff, and it is. You know, he's got a wideband radio scanner and cameras and microphone. So anything around it gets recorded, and they can look at the data and see if it's anomalous. Now, Arrow has a similar thing. It's called a gremlin. Now, Avi Loeb has set up 2 of these Galileo sensing stations. And they're building another one, building a third one. Of course, there'll be so much stuff flying around, you know, going through all this data he's going to get, you know, every Cessna is going to have to be eliminated. Personally, I think it's a waste of time, but, you know, I wouldn't do it. It's a bit like me setting cameras up, because I live up in the air. It's a bit like me setting up cameras up on the roof, you know, microphones up on the roof and all this sort of stuff. I just wouldn't bother doing it, you know. Now, Arrow has a thing called a gremlin, which is a little more sophisticated actually than Avi Loeb's, surprisingly, because Avi Loeb is a scientist. Actually, yeah, the Arrow guys are probably scientists as well, aren't they, come to think of it? Yeah, the people running Arrow and PhDs. But Arrow has these things called gremlins, and I don't know how many of these they've got set up, but I saw a diagram of one. They've got 4 two-dimensional radars. They'll be cheap sort of marine radars, probably, sort of thing you put on a yacht. As I've said before, you know, you can look at a marine radar and you can see a dot moving across the screen. It won't tell you the altitude, but it'll tell you the bearing and distance. Two-dimensional radar, that's what Arrow's set up. 4 of those. They got these 4 two-dimensional radars, either spinning or phased, to give 360-degree coverage. Then they've got a 3-dimensional radar, which Avi Loeb doesn't have, apparently. I don't think, when I'm looking at the diagram of the Galileo stuff. So a 3-dimensional radar will also give altitude. So you see the dot going across the screen, it will say this is the bearing, this is the distance, this is the altitude. So Arrow's gremlins are a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit better than Avi Loeb's Galileo sensing stations, but you know, again, low-hanging fruit. They're going to get so much data. I wouldn't want to sit there and go through it. Now, Avi Loeb I saw Avi Loeb being interviewed, and he was talking about this 3-eye atlas, you know, 3-eye third interstellar object atlas. And there are a couple of coincidences that he thinks are worthy of note. Now, you've got to bear in mind, Avi Loeb is a real professor. You know, he's a real scientist. He's not a fake professor like Simon Hogwash, who obviously has zero understanding of what he's presenting 95% of the time. Avi Loeb, a real scientist. Now, a real professor. So, he says, if you have an annual vacation, that's what the Americans call annual leave, holiday, you should take it before October the 29th. Now, well, I might take a week or 2 off, just in case. I like Avi Loeb. He's a smart guy. So, yeah, I think he's worth listening to. So Avi Loeb says, if you have an annual vacation, an annual holiday, take it before October the 29th. That's this year, of course. Because this is when 3i Atlas will start its deceleration behind the Sun to allow it to intercept the Earth. If it's an alien object, if it's ET technology, and not just a rock, he's saying that the trajectory, its approach, it's a bit too coincidental. There's a lot of coincidences that make it look like it's not a natural object, that make it look like it could be an alien spacecraft. Now, what Avi Loeb says is that it seems a bit more, it's a bit of a coincidence that it's going to arrive on the opposite side of the Sun to the Earth when it arrives, when it comes in through the solar system towards the Sun. It will be in the correct position behind the Sun to start using the Sun as gravitational braking if it was going to whip around and come to the Earth. So that is interesting. Of course, it might just go sailing past because it's a rock. Personally, I think that's what's going to happen. But that is a coincidence. You know, if it's also heading in the opposite direction to the Earth around the Sun. So it's coming into the solar system, it's going past Jupiter, Mars, and it's going to be going past Venus as well, I think. And Avi Loeb says if it was an alien probe, it's going to get a good look at those planets. And then it can, as it gets closer to the Sun, it will use the Sun as gravitational braking as it goes around the Sun. Whip it round and it will come around to meet the Earth, which is coming in the opposite direction towards it. If it's an alien spacecraft, and it's lined up to do that apparently. And Avi Loeb thinks that may not be a coincidence. Of course, if it's a rock, it will just keep going. Now, so it could be an alien spacecraft that's coming to meet us. Obviously, we don't know what, if it is, we don't know what they're going to do when they get here. Now, 3i Atlas, the 3i Atlas trajectory is aligned within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, the orbital plane of the Earth, to within 5 degrees. So it's coming through the solar system, in the plane of the solar system, within 5 degrees. And probably within 5 degrees, if you're an alien spacecraft, you wouldn't want to be exactly in the plane because there's going to be a lot of debris and rocks and all that sort of stuff. So you want to be a little bit above it until you get closer towards the inner planets where there's less of that sort of stuff. So that's interesting. It came from the direction of the galactic centre, where there's the highest concentration of stars. So if an alien species wanted to surprise us, this is the best direction to come from, as it would be harder to see, Avi Loeb says, because you've got a big bunch of stars at the centre of the galaxy, lots of bright dots, you've got a bright dot coming towards it. It's harder to see that one bright dot. And of course, the centre of the galaxy, you're going to get more and more higher concentration of planets and stars and planets. So there's a higher concentration of potentially a higher concentration of civilizations. Avi Loeb didn't say that, I did, but he's saying that it's coming from the direction of the centre of the galaxy because there's a lot of bright dots. Basically, who's going to notice another bright dot? So that's a point that Avi Loeb makes. I suppose so, but I mean, it would be a lot better just to have your spacecraft cloaked, wouldn't it, or not appear as a bright dot at all. I mean, we would it'd be a complete surprise, wouldn't it? Because we wouldn't see it until we wouldn't see it glowing, so we wouldn't see anything at all until it was right on top of us. So that will be the best way to surprise us. I mean, if your spacecraft has to glow, then coming from the galactic centre, hidden amongst all the other glowing stars is probably a good way of doing it, as Avi Loeb says. Doesn't make sense, doesn't it? So, as I said in a previous video, could it be possible that Oumuamua was just was an alien probe, not just a rock? Could it be an ET species version of the US Cobra Ball spy plane? Now, the Cobra Balls, I think they keep them at Diego Garcia most of the time. Well, anyway, so what the Cobra Ball does, it tickles an adversary's airspace, the fringes of their airspace, flies in and out. And that lights up the adversarial country's air defences. It lights up their radars, you know. So the Cobra Ball can then, it's got all sorts of interesting equipment on it, so it will analyse the signals it's being bombarded with. So it can measure radar frequencies, pulse repetition rates. They can tell if they're being painted with infrared lasers, all that sort of stuff. That's what a Cobra Ball can do. So would and eavesdrop on communications. So could Oumuamua have been something like that? It's completely dead as it goes past, because it's completely passive. It goes past and it's seeing, first of all, if we can physically intercept it. Do we send anything to fly around it, look at it, shoot at it? Could it just be monitoring our space radars, you know, space infrared lasers, you know, see what it's being bombarded with, measure the pulse repetition rates, measure the frequencies, you know, so that the alien species that sent it will then know that we can't intercept it, and they will know exactly what to expect when this other thing, this big thing, turns up in October. Could it be something like that? I don't have any X-Files music, unfortunately. It's probably just as well. Yeah. Got a copyright strike. But could it be? Could it be? You know, could it be Avi Loeb is right? If he is, I think taking a holiday before the end of October, is pretty sage advice. Because I very much doubt an alien species would come here to say hello. There's going to be nothing in it for them. It may be that the planet is being monitored. You know, aliens are seeing all the wars going on around the place. You know, how we're all killing each other all the time, finding better ways of killing each other, how we can't get along. Everyone's starting a war every other week, it seems, recently. And it may be that you know, there is something called a galactic federation or galactic police. And they've had a little meeting, you know, and they said there's no way we can let this species get beyond their solar system. We cannot have this species roaming around among the stars, because we can see by looking at their planet what's going to happen when they get here. This species needs to be nipped in the bud. So this thing, this 20 kilometre wide, 12 kilometre wide thing, whatever it is, may be that. May whip around the sun, break around the sun, come to meet the Earth, split into a number of smaller things, spray nasty stuff into the atmosphere, kill us all within 2 days. Maybe that's what's going to happen. So take that holiday now. Avi Loeb says, you know, it would be good if they were visitors, because they might be able to tell us some physics we do not understand, dark energy, dark matter, gravity physics that we do not understand. And I thought Avi Loeb was a bit smarter than that, because no ET species is going to come here and give us any information that would help us get to them. Not once they've looked around what's going on around the planet. There is absolutely no way they would give us any kind of technological leg up. They would not say, oh yeah, if you want to fly around between the stars, this is how you do it, you know, the chalk on the board. They're not going to do that. they would have to be the dumbest aliens in the galaxy, if not the universe, if they did that. So could it be like a scene from the day the Earth stood still, you know, where they're coming here to say, look, you know, knock it on the head, or we'll knock you on the head? Could that be the case? I think Avi Loeb is overly optimistic, thinking that they'd be coming here to, you know, tell us what happened before the Big Bang, to give us any kind of technological advantage with physics. I think he's dreaming. I probably will take a holiday before October, just in case. But my feeling is it's a natural object. But as preposterous as this is going to sound, I have in the past been wrong. Okay. Oh, actually, there's a bit more on that page. Oh, hang on. I skipped over. There's 2 pages stuck together there. So, as I've said, Avi Loeb, I like Avi Loeb. I like what he's doing. I think he's quite right. You know, if you don't look, you don't know. I think he's a bit overly optimistic if he thinks aliens are going to come here and give us a technological advantage. Not going to happen. There's absolutely nothing in a meeting between ET and us for the ETs. There's only 2 reasons they'd be coming here. One, to warn us, to show themselves very obviously and say, look, knock it on the head, or we'll knock you on the head. No one would doubt that they could do that. Or 2, it's just it's a robotic probe, and it's full of little probes that will release a bioweapon that will annihilate every living thing on Earth that they don't want. You know, like people, mosquitoes, you know, pit bulls, you know, that sort of stuff. Last thing they want, and the last thing they're going to want is a pit bull hanging on their ET ball bags. And that's not going to be in their plan at all. So, so good on Avi Loeb. But yes, I think he's wrong, and I sincerely hope he's wrong. I sincerely hope it's a natural object. They'll be able to tell fairly shortly, I think, by, you know, as it gets closer with the better gear we've got these days, they'll be able to do spectral analysis of the light it's giving off, and they'll be able to tell certain things about it. Would an alien spacecraft need to glow? You know, I mean, this proposed theoretical warp drive, if anyone made that work, would the spacecraft glow? Would you see it glow? Actually, yeah. Would you see a glow around it as it was accelerating up to, you know, or beyond light? Actually, as the bubble accelerated, would you see it? Would it be illuminated? The warp bubble. It could be that they've come from, you know, thousands of light years away, and they're coming to see us. So in fact, they've switched the landing lights on. This is so close that they just switched the landing lights on. So it lights up like a Christmas tree. Well, they know we can't intercept it, so there'd be no harm in that, would there really? Excuse me. So, moving on. Jake Barber and his team appear to know they have no chance of producing an alien spacecraft by Christmas. Remember when they set up Skywatcher? We're going to deliver you an alien spacecraft within 12 months. Excuse me, blimey. No. They're beginning to realise that they're not going to be able to do that. They're submitting videos of flocks of birds. You know, they're saying they're summoning alien spacecraft, which is the height of arrogance in itself. ET's not going to be waiting in orbit directly above where all these psionic summoners are sitting in their lawn chairs, just waiting to be summoned, so they can go down and float around in the distance. So they never come close. So, you know, it's no, they're not summoning anything. If they could summon something and it would come and land right by them, and they could get good footage of it, and they could get samples of it, that would be delivering on their promise. They can deliver an ET spacecraft within 12 months. So they said that in January, was it? So they've only got a few months to go, and they're realising they're going to have to come up with the goods, or risk damaging their funding, which of course they will. As soon as people realise that they're not producing anything at all other than fuzzy images of flocks of birds and little bright lights in the distance, the funding's going to dry up. Well, it certainly should anyway. Garry Nolan, of course, seems to think there's something to that, but he also claims to have been visited at home by aliens. So Barber is claiming that Skywatcher can summon alien spacecraft on a willy-nilly basis with their electromechanical dog whistle. Oh dear, if that were true, he would be able to make good on his claim of producing an alien spacecraft, wouldn't he? Now, the details of this electromechanical dog whistle are highly classified. Because they know if the details were released, we would all fall about laughing. And of course, it would be duplicated and found to be nothing more than a theatrical prop to fool the gullible. That's all it's going to be. A theatrical prop to fool the gullible. Put more money in. You know, look, you know, we'll fire up our electromechanical dog whistle. Oh, look, right in the distance there's a little tiny light and it's going up and down, you know, because he's got his other team out there with a couple of drones. You know, it's just rubbish. And of course, you know, for it to qualify under the scientific method, of course, it's going to have to be duplicatable. Going to have to be duplicatable, isn't it? You're going to have to build a dog whistle, make an identical dog whistle, and then, you know, a completely independent group of scientists will then be able to summon alien spacecraft. You know, that's what would happen if it was real. And of course, it isn't. It's bullshit. Anything to do with Skywatcher is bullshit. Psionics is bullshit. You know, if we had the details of their electromechanical dog whistle, we would find it was bullshit within 10 minutes. Which is why it's secret. Secret source, as Jake Barber describes it. Theatrical prop to fool the gullible. Well, Nolan fell for it. He says he's seen this device in action. And it works. He's seen some anomalous stuff when they've switched this thing on. I suspect Barber is using Nolan as a useful idiot, because he knows Nolan gets interviewed. Nolan will repeat he'll say there's something to it. You know, he's claiming he's had aliens in his bedroom. You know, and they think that they'll use Nolan as a useful idiot, and that will help with their credibility. Skywatcher's credibility, or Nolan's credibility even, you know, with regard to this subject. I saw Nolan being interviewed by Jordan Peterson. I'm surprised Peterson would bother with this, to be honest. He tells us NHI have been here for millions of years. This is Garry Nolan, you know. Perhaps it means crocodiles. You know, crocodiles have been around for 200 million years, haven't they? You know. I actually said I was in Darwin a few years back, and there was a food stand there, and they do crocodile and kangaroo and all this other stuff in burgers, you know. And I said, I'll have a crocodile burger, and can you make it snappy? You know, but he said, haven't heard that one for about 10 minutes. So is Nolan talking about crocodiles? You know, he's saying NHI have been here for millions of years. You know, now they're not the smartest critters on the face of the earth, but they've done pretty well to keep their species going for 200 million years. Of course, there's no ET, non-extraterrestrial, non-human intelligence on Earth. If you're claiming that, Nolan, prove it. Let's see some tangible evidence to back that statement up. He won't have any, of course. The best he can do is fiddle around with bits of industrial waste from the Burlison Kroll lead purification process. Lead, bismuth, and magnesium. Who would produce that? Of course, it wasn't engineered. It's just the crust off the top of a lead purification process. I didn't hear Nolan tell Peterson about the aliens in his bedroom for weeks on end when he was a kid. Around his bed, looking through the windows, weeks on end. Nolan is so interesting as a child. These aliens crossed the galaxy just to stand around his bed and look through his bedroom windows at him. Doesn't tell his brother, doesn't tell his parents. It's been on for weeks. And just before he was about to start his job at Stanford as a professor, alien appeared in his bedroom and communicated with him telepathically. He didn't tell Nolan. He didn't tell Peterson these stories. I skipped through it. To be perfectly honest, I skipped through it. I can't take much of Nolan. I skipped through it, but I certainly did not hear him telling Jordan Peterson about the aliens in his bedroom when he was a kid and when he was an adult. The one that appeared in his bedroom when he was an adult, just about to start his work as a professor at Stanford, communicated with him telepathically. Apparently, we don't hear what it said to him. How it could understand English. How Nolan could understand Zargian, or Pleiadian. That's the flavour of the month, isn't it? The Pleiades. That's where Billy Meyer's beam ships came from, wasn't it? Beam ships from the Pleiades. Well, actually, most of what they were made of came from the Volvo car factory, Volvo hubcaps. Billy Meyer. Beam ships from the Pleiades. Anyway, I suspect Nolan did not tell Peterson these visiting ET stories. That he personally, been visited by extraterrestrials in his bedroom. Wait for it. Because Peterson would have fallen about laughing. He would have to be very mindful, of course, that Peterson is a psychologist. I think he's a psychologist, isn't he, Jordan Peterson? And he may have offered a professional opinion as to what may really have been going on. So I strongly suspect that's why Nolan never told Peterson his ridiculous visiting ET stories, because Peterson would have just fallen about laughing and thought, I know what's been going on here. Alright, well that's it. I don't know how long that one was. Quite a few notes here. I think a couple of pages were duplicated. Not unusual for me. Not me. But there we go. The wonderful world of ET is coming here and crashing here. Pitfall peddling dealt with for another week. If I can find enough piffle, then maybe I'll catch you again. As always, many thanks for watching.